Two, one, and we are live.
Hey, it's Friday again, and guess what? I'm on time. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm ready to go. And today we really have a really special session, um, building resilience. How do we get stronger? How do we get better? I looked at this presentation from these three wonderful, I call guidance counselors, and we'll talk about why that's so important. Is that some of us like Star Trek, some of us don't. But everybody should love having good guidance through Star Trek. And so I had too many people that you either get other. Someone gives you a lemon, you make lemonade, and we're gonna make some lemonade tonight, and we're gonna do some wonderful things. First of all, I hope everybody's had a wonderful week. I still have a number of phone calls to make. I'm not doing too badly today, but it's been a challenging week like all, but a very, 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 very good week too. What's the first slide you got there, Paul?
Yeah. So Erica, maybe try to read. Oh, there it is. Okay.
So to me, this has been a good week. You can see we have some new additions. We have two little baby chicks that joined our house. And what happened was that this was my Father's Day present. What happened was that I always wanted to have some chickens again, and most of the animals we have are rescue animals. So what happened here is that someone decided in Hamilton that they want to have chickens in their backyard, so they got two baby chicks. But then they realized that they can't keep baby chicks, and they were going to kill them. And so my wife Carrie heard about this, and we picked up the chicks. And so these, and I'm trying to think of names for them. I was thinking of calling like, actually, we should have a competition for good names. I was thinking of like egg white, omelet, and so hope to eat the eggs in this. But my wife wants some real names, but I like those kind of names. So we need to have a competition, something health related, how to name those chicks. We don't know if they're a boy or a girl. We haven't really figured that part out, and we're trying to train them so that they'll stay on your hand and things of that nature. And the other excitement is that in the middle there is my lovely daughter Jenna. She looks just like her dad. Is that so? Graduation time for Jenna, and so we had the graduation party, and so Jenna got two awards so far. She's got MVP for the water polo team, and she got a very precious award for all community work. And one of the persons that made a difference there was John. They recognized her for Jenna being in Kenya a couple times and doing a lot of good work on helping others. So proud, Dad. And you can also see that black thing in the back is my tuxedo. And I wore my tuxedo twice in my lifetime. The day I got married and Jenna's graduation. I can still fit into it. And actually, it's a little less snug now. So I think I lay a little less weight than the day I got married. And interesting thing is that when I was doing my training in cardiology, one of the things that one of my professors taught me is that how do you find someone's best weight? And he said, for women, you ask the day they got married, because that's the best weight most women will be, he says. Is that true or not? I don't know. For guys, Paul, what's the best weight for us guys, you think?
I really don't know. I would assume the same thing the day you get married.
I would have thought, I think my best weight is when I tried out from the McGill Redmond football team.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was sort of a dream to play football at university, but I wasn't very good. I never really trained at football, but I lasted on the team for about 3 4 days before they gave me my boot. But it was probably my best weight, I think, at that time. And so because I didn't make it as a football player, I became a doctor. So that's my course here. If you again, there's something you get to different pathways. What you're seeing is we see Lucy, that little dog there. That's Natasha, one of our people in the clinic. She got a brand new puppy this week. And then we see a picture on the right, and these are two fine people that in there you can see some smart goals. And one of the things is committing yourself to being healthy and always finding supports along the way. So my hope today is at the end of this discussion, people will pick some SMART goals, and we will give you the support you need to achieve those goals. So I didn't quite make it as a football player, but I'm a doctor now, um, and we had two brand new chickens, and so to me, there's so much to discuss, and let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had a really good experience this week. One of our patients came in and presented a little gift today, so I think I'll just have a list. Let's have a listen. Okay, so Paul's going to just play this little video. So,
Sorry, Erica, you might need to optimize for video as well when you're sharing that.
so we're learning new ways how to use all this YouTube thing, and
Where is that?
okay, and
So stop sharing the screen, and then when you reshare, when you hit that share content button at the top there's this button that says optimize for text. Change that to optimize for motion and video.
Okay.
so you see, we're all learning how to do better technology, better ways. Where my last patient, Natasha, was showing them how to get onto YouTube and how to use their computer today. Sonia, who's done her wonderful videos on technology, we have at least 4 of them already. Has gotten patients to work on technology, and we're all getting a little bit better at this. And let's take a look to see what this video shows. Maybe.
And I thought of you when you were telling the story about going over to Africa and helping the people, and you experienced so much joy helping them. And I just thought this painting might bring you some good memories to have it up. So here's the present.
Well, thank you so much. And this is wonderful. You made my day. So I got a little tears in my eyes here. Acts of kindness always go a long way, and grateful to be able to do sorts of things like this, and grateful to have people like yourselves. Here's something from us. This is 30 Days to Healthier You. It's something that the team and I put together over about 25 years. It's the work of so many, and the point of this is to try something different, you repeating over again, and you'll find a new version of yourself. You already lost some weight. Hope this helps a little bit more. I know, look at this. Every time I have a bad encounter with something, I'll remember the goodness of your heart. And Shirley, thank you, and we'll see you on the webinars.
Thank you.
So that was a wonderful gift I got this week, and another gift was John Smits, who has done some wonderful work on in Africa and in Kenya. So, John, thank you for coming out today, and why don't you say a few words what's happening in Kenya and some of the things that you've been doing?
Well, this is our 15th year, and I can't believe that I've been retired that long. So I retired in 06, and in 05, my charitable organization got going, and I was told to watch it because it will be like a horse that you can't control. And that's exactly what's happening. Where we are right now, Greg, our sanitation, as far as our latrines are concerned, we're at 187. Our tanks are at 25. The tanks that you constantly come through and your organization gives us. Unfortunately, our pen pal program had to die because all the schools closed, but we were on pace for about 1,000 letters this year. And if you multiply that by the number of letters we've sent over the past 15 years, we're over 10,000 letters, which is really quite remarkable. Kids in Kenya writing to kids in Hamilton, and we even have kids in Tokyo writing to kids in Kenya. So that's an interesting situation there. Where we are going right now is, since the schools are closed, I was mentioning this to you earlier, my program monitor came up with the idea of, why don't we make sure that we have at all of our 9 schools when they open in September the ingredients for the kids to make hand soap. And Greg, when you and everybody along with me were at my schools there in 2000 and help me out, 17? Was it 2017?
I know I've been there twice. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so I can't remember back then, but we've been there a couple of times thanks to you.
Anyway, they're going to be making some hand soap, which is going to help the kids be sanitized. And the toughest thing about this social distancing and this COVID-19 and all the kinds of things is Kenyans have a lot of problems social distancing. I've never met a Kenyan who didn't have 16 other people hounding around them. As well as the kids getting back to school, they don't necessarily have a lot of water to use for anything but drinking. So the tanks that we put in allow them to have extra water in order to make porridge, make the soap, and all sorts of things. So things are all good. Things are good. And even though not a lot is happening because the schools are closed, that doesn't mean that we can't keep going. And that's what we continue to do.
Well, John has done work for so many years at helping others, and it's been a real privilege to help out. I've had 2 trips to Kenya. I look forward to trip 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to try to help in some way. So, Paul, why don't you show us what we're going to do?
Sure. So one way that we are going to be helping as well. So some of you might remember last week we talked about, or a little bit ago, we talked about the 30 Days to a Healthier You challenge. So we're going to be reviving that challenge once more, and we're going to be challenging you to lead a healthier lifestyle for 30 days with the 30 Days to a Healthier You book. So one idea we have is, we're selling this book for $30. And all the money, so that $30 is going to be going to this charity as well. So, on one hand, you are getting a book that will help you lead a healthier lifestyle and hopefully inspire you to, lose some weight and change your diet and all that fun stuff. And you're also donating at the same time. Now, on top of that, one thing that we are going to be doing is we're going to be having one-on-one follow-up sessions for people who register for this program. So in these follow-up sessions, you'll meet with one of our volunteers who will be a health coach for you. We'll look at your progress, what your weaknesses are, your strengths, and how to keep moving to really build that resilience like we're going to talk about today and motivate you to continue leading that healthier lifestyle. And for each of these one-on-one sessions you attend, Dr. Kurnew himself will donate an additional $10 for a total of $30 for 3 sessions. So you have the opportunity to get a 30 Days to a Healthier You book, and donating a total of $60, so 30 from yourself and 30 from Dr. Kurnew, and start leading a healthier lifestyle. So if you are interested, I have the registration link on the screen there, so you can either type that into your internet. If you're on YouTube, I'll have it in the description, and I will send it here on WebEx as well. We will contact you later to schedule a pickup time or give you pickup dates, which is also will be the time where you come to clinic. You can pick up your book, pay the $30, and start scheduling some coaching sessions too.
So we decided to do is that to help. So you buy the book for $30. I take that money and I donate it to John and his team. And one of the things they need a new computer, they need soap, they need water tanks, they need latrines, whatever John decides he needs, we'll do. One of the teachers asked me for a laptop and computer. That's what we're going to do with some of that money. And then every 30 days that you're healthier and you participate with one of our health coaches, I'll donate another $10. So you buy the book for $30, I give $60 to Kenya, you lose 20 pounds and be healthier and put me out of business, is my hope, is the goal of this. And we want to thank John so much for all his hard work. What I've learned is that to do something good, you need a team. And John, you've done some wonderful things, and I just want to thank you. I think we should all give you a warm applause. So John, thank you. So what we're doing right now until Labor Day, you buy the book. One of our on these webinars, and you make these steps to be healthier. And it'd be a real honor to support you and to see everybody get a little bit healthier.
Greg, I'm going to have to remind you, I need to go to another meeting, if that's okay with you. But thank you. And you know what? I need one of those books, and I need to get, because I'm putting on some weight I don't want.
Fantastic.
You're
We'd
going
be
to
a
hear,
pleasure honor.
you're
And
going to hear
remember, for those people who cannot attend the webinars live, they're always recorded. You can come back to them, and we're really
Excellent.
pleased that we can do something to help others. John, thank you, and we'll
Thank you.
talk to you soon. Bye bye now.
Paul, thank you very much for setting this up.
Of course.
All right, let's move on to so this. You can see this is my way of trying to be a little bit healthier, and here's how I get a little bit resilient. So what I've learned is by giving, I get so much more in return. And what I noticed in this situation is that there are many people that have given so much, and if we can give a little bit something, terrific. And one thing you can think about, instead of eating, take that money and go on a starvation diet for a while. Just kidding. Well, maybe that's not such a bad idea. All right, beautiful picture.
All right. So last summer, I also went to Kenya, and these are just some photos from the kids at the orphanage where a group of volunteers set up a medical camp. And so when I met some of these kids, I was really wondering, why or how are they so happy despite having so little? And they call themselves the world's largest family. It's also known as the Molly Children's Family. And I think it's often overlooked, but it's that fact that they have such great social support coming from difficult backgrounds, whether it's physical abuse or abandonment and homelessness. Through the Molly Children's Family, they've come together. And what these pictures show is how team sports have really helped these individuals develop and learn how to trust again, whether it be through acrobats, so learning how to trust a complete stranger to hold you up into the air as you flip backward or do a handstand. It just goes to show how you can learn to be resilient and trust or have faith in one way and hopefully apply that to your life in another. And that's just part of building resilience, which is what we're talking about today. And it's what I want to explain is that it's not just a negative experience that makes us stronger, but it's how we build ourselves up after that experience. And so we have a few volunteers here, myself, Zoya, Aditi, and Emily, as well as Paul and Dr. Kerner, of course. If you watch Star Trek, you probably understand these.
So I'm back that go back that picture. So this requires some explanation here. So I love Star Trek, and Troy, of course, is the counselor on one of the Star Trek episodes. I have a lot of counselors, a lot of help along the way, and these are some of these wonderful people that made us all better. And they help me explain why certain things don't work and how to make things better. So I thank you all for all your kindness and your hard work. And we're going to, where no man or woman has ever gone before. We're going to make everybody else more resilient and healthier today. Let's move forward.
Okay, so these are just some of the topics we'll be covering. What exactly is resilience, how that relates to anxiety, and then ways that we can better ourselves through practical strategies. And so the first question then is, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as a victim or a survivor? I think a lot of us might feel like a victim of COVID or quarantine right now, but if we reframe our perspective and think about other ways we can cope better, that's hopefully what we'll provide you with today. So what's interesting is that we all live through an average of 5 to 6 traumatic events, and that includes things like losing a loved one, losing a job, or even getting an unfortunate medical diagnosis. But the good thing, from what research has shown, is that almost all of these people experience growth from that trauma. And it may take months or years, but eventually we learn at least one thing from that. And a strong predictor of whether or not we'll learn and grow from that experience is if we're willing to open up about this trauma, whatever it may be. And so what we encourage you to do is to reach out for support in whatever your problem is. Just talking about it simply is the first step that might get you to open up and see things from a different perspective. And we've talked about this in previous webinars, but just to remind you, on average, most of our thoughts are negative. So of that 60,000, 80%, and then 95% of those will be repetitive throughout the day from yesterday. And that's found by the National Science Foundation. And so when we think about thinking versus worrying, this is important to distinguish so that we can recognize whether or not whatever we're thinking about is actually helping us or not. Our feelings are very temporary, although they may not feel like it because they are repetitive. They're self-contained as well, which means that they're going to be biased, which is why we want to tell other people or talk about it so that they can give us different perspectives and help us reframe our attitude. And so a concept from psychology is called cognitive dissonance, which refers to this feeling of anxiety that we experience when our actions don't match our thoughts. And so if there's an inconsistency between our attitudes and behaviors, we tend to feel anxious in a way that we have to do something about it, or we have to change the way we think. So an example is with a smoker. Let's say they're constantly making excuses for why they should smoke, for example, because it makes them less stressed. And they continue to make similar excuses to this so that eventually they don't believe smoking is that bad anymore. And so the pros will somehow outweigh the cons. And that's what I mean when I say what feels good will suddenly become what feels right to us, even though that may not be the case. And an interesting article that I came across titled, "There's a Reason We Procrastinate and It's Not Laziness." The reason they say is that because the tasks that we are avoiding are associated to negative feelings. And a negative feeling, for example, is anxiety or fear of failure. And so the more that we procrastinate, sometimes the more that enables us to continue that negative behavior. And so the goal here to resolve that cognitive dissonance or anxiety is to change our behavior so that it fits what's actually right. And just to illustrate the concept of feelings and how that plays a role in the way we see our situation, this author called Mark Manson has an interesting article where he addresses meta feelings, which are just the way we feel about our own feelings. So for one, self-loathing would be feeling bad about feeling bad. And that involves like criticizing yourself overly, which relates to feeling bad about feeling good in the way that it results in feeling guilty and also criticizing ourselves, but also feeling undeserving of that goodness. And then we have self-righteousness, which is feeling good about feeling bad, which is not great because that usually leads to victimization and feeling entitled. And of course, feeling good about feeling good, which you can think about as a narcissistic attitude to the extremes. And the point of this slide, it's not really important what each of these mean, but it just shows how we can feel good about things that are actually bad, or sometimes bad things will make us feel good. And it doesn't really change whether or not the situation is inherently good or bad. And so in the end, our feelings might not really mean anything at all. They might just be the way that we interpret the situation. And I think this quote ties it together quite nicely. It just explains that the way that we think about events may not really, the way we think about events is what really frightens us. It's our interpretation in the end, not really the events themselves. And I'm sure you're familiar with Elon Musk. We're going to show a quick clip from here, just 2 minutes, and then we'll go over the 10 rules, which Elon himself described for his own success as the CEO of SpaceX, Tesla, the Boring Company, Neuralink, OpenAI, and probably more.
So to me, he's one of those amazing people for so many reasons. One, he never gives up. He works harder than most people, and he's not afraid to make a mistake. He's the guy that blew up 3 space rockets and spent $200 million and was going bankrupt, but look at him now.
And then just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. And then
a lot of work.
All those things improve the odds of success. I mean, if other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that in 1 year you will achieve what they achieve. You will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve.
Okay, I like your work ethic.
All right.
Thanks.
Elon. You need to work, depending on how well you want to do, particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night, 7 days a week, all the time. And I sort of briefly had a girlfriend in that period, and in order to be with me, she had to sleep in the office. So work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, say like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. Have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens, because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism and things are great, and then so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues, and happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. That's.
Okay, so I'd recommend checking out the rest of that video, but to summarize his rules, we have them here for you.
So he has some amazing thoughts and rules. Work like hell, have a high pain threshold, think critically, add value to society, take a risk, have a great product service, attract great people, constantly seek criticism, try something new, overcome critics. So this applies to everything that one does. My reading on people who become successful, the number one priority is hard work. So 80%, this rule of 10,000 hours to become good at something, that didn't come by accident. Yeah, we're going to make some mistakes, but how are we going to bounce back from this? and how to help others. So I commend what Elon Musk has done in many ways, and not too many people have his brain power, his determination, and uh, how he gathers good people together. But you can think in your world. In my world, is that I make a few mistakes, and you bounce back, and you surround yourself with good people, and you work like hell. And I think there's wonderful rules, and I'm working like hell to be healthy. I'm working like hell to do a good job in my career. And I love to learn, learn new things, and so I think these are wonderful messages. And it's about a 10-minute YouTube video, really well worth looking at. What do you think of it, Erica?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think part of it, though, is finding the difficulty in making time because he works so hard. But we'll go into that on the next slide. So, how do you gain control of your free time? This is from a TED Talk by Laura Vanderkam. And what I think Dr. Kernu also really likes about this TED Talk is the language that it uses. So oftentimes we'll say I'm too busy or I don't have time to do that. But if we're speaking honestly, it's likely that it's just not our priority at the moment. And so what I think is so important here is that the language we use can shape how we actually behave, which goes to say that our thoughts will shape our behavior. And so a tip for procrastination would be instead of asking yourself, what's, what should I do or how can I accomplish my goal? Of course, you need to ask that, but instead of breaking down the whole task into, 1,000 different pieces, which can be overwhelming, ask yourself just what's the next step that I can take? And instead focus on that next step, which is concrete and small so that it's actually achievable. And just ask yourself how you can make progress instead of thinking about the bigger picture all the time. And so I want us to all take a moment to do that. If you have a paper or your phone, just pull it out, or even in the chat box if you're willing to share. Let's imagine that it's next year, the end of next year. So we'll give you a little bit more time. And imagine what 3 or 5 things made it a really good year for you, whether that's health-wise or career-wise. If you had to really place yourself in that situation ahead of time, what things would make it better or good for you? And once you have that down, you might want to think about it a little more, but you can always refer back to it and maybe even check back in a year or 2 and see if you actually progressed to that at all. And so what we're doing here is trying to see and visualize the bigger picture before we start making those concrete SMART goals.
Hello?
Hello. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you. It's
So we're just talking about procrastination, and ultimately, we're probably not all going to be like Elon Musk. He strives for really big goals. He's ambitious, and I think that's inspirational. But for getting started and just making a small difference, we really just need to take small steps to begin with. And now we'll talk a little more about resilience and what exactly that means.
Okay, so to start off, we kind of have to define what resilience means, and there's a couple of different definitions out there, but the American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedies, threats, or even significant sources of stress. It's important to recognize that resilience is not the same as stoicism. So when you're resilient, you're able to adapt or recover from a situation, but that doesn't mean that you don't get to express your emotions or showcase your emotions and your thoughts and how you're dealing with the situation. When you talk about being stoic, it usually means those kinds of things, except not expressing your emotions. And expressing emotions is a really big part of building resilience, especially if it's the first time that you're trying to adapt to something that's, a significant stressor in your life. Over time, the more resilient you become, you tend to learn how to manage the emotions better, and you get this sense of the the fact that the pain that you're facing or the fear that you're facing at that particular point in time is just a stepping stone and you're going to be able to overcome it. And that's really what resilience encompasses, the idea that you're able to adapt and recover from a situation. And it might take you a while to get there, and there are a lot of different ways to get there, but it's being able to take all of those different experiences along the way and put it towards creating a more sustainable lifestyle or sustainable way of viewing a situation.
So there's many different types of resilience, and I think something that's really important to note is that we probably won't know how resilient we actually are until we're put in those situations. So I think a lot of the time we spend our time kind of preparing ourselves in situations to be able to act resiliently when we are faced with a challenge. And so a lot of the times when we look at kids, most people will say that kids are very resilient. Sometimes we attribute this to ignorance. Maybe they aren't as aware of all of the problems in the world, but they are definitely more willing to take risks. And I think it becomes a little bit more dangerous as they grow older if there's kind of an inherent fear of failure. And that's kind of where we start to lose our resilience, I think. But there are a few different types of resilience. So there's the inherent one that we attribute to being born with naturally. And this kind of protects us. It allows us to explore our world. It encourages us to play and take risks and try new things. Then we also have adapted resilience, and this can occur at different points in our lives based on different stressful situations. And it allows us to kind of channel our energy into productive activity. And then there's also learned resilience, and this is something that we can build up over time through new activities, once again, surrounding ourselves with people who are equally as motivated. And then when we are faced with a situation that is challenging, this is where it kind of comes out. So why is resilience important? The first thing I think is it definitely encourages us to be productive. So like Erica mentioned, a lot of the time procrastination can occur because we're kind of hiding from something that we want to confront, or we don't want to kind of address our negative emotions. But definitely resilience can encourage us to be productive and channel our energy into being better ourselves and also helping others. Secondly, it can also help us maintain a balance, especially if we are overwhelmed with negative emotions and stress. Being able to know ourselves well enough to manage that is really important. And then long term, being resilient in challenging situations, it can definitely help us promote positive mental health and contribute to our overall well-being. Okay, so when we talk about resilience, I think one of the things we need to look at is the concept of failure and how we approach situations, especially when the stakes might be a little bit higher. I think it's really important to know that it's okay to try something and not succeed at it the first time or a couple of times. I think everything can be seen as a learning moment. And even through failure, there's definitely something that we can take away and be a better person than we were before we entered that situation. So it's definitely an opportunity to do better and be better. I think when we stop trying to do better and we kind of give in to that temptation, we stop learning, and then ultimately we kind of lose our resilience. So I think it's really important that we surround ourselves with people that are like-minded and also encourage us to pursue our goals. Like it was mentioned, we have a lot of negative thoughts on a daily basis, and we don't really need to surround ourselves with people that are further perpetuating those negative thoughts and bringing us down, because that can also drain a lot of our energy, which could be used to be productive. So it's really important to find people that are around you that are encouraging you to try again and telling you that you're going to get it next time, instead of those that are just pushing you to give up and kind of stay with the status quo. So I think this is something we can definitely see a lot, that we definitely need to see a lot more of in schools in work and in other situations. And I think it comes from a combination of being self-motivated and also getting support from others, which all contribute to resilience. Okay, so another thing that can happen when we kind of get set back in our ways and stop trying new things is the concept of learned helplessness. So this can occur if we have had a challenging experience happen to us more than once, or it's a reoccurring thing, and we're not seeing success. We kind of conclude that we have no control over the situation, and we don't really jump on new opportunities to improve ourselves even when they arise. We kind of become dismissive, we can get low self-esteem, go into patterns of frustration and passivity. A common example of this is when I work with patients who are trying to lose weight. A lot of the times, if they don't see results in the first little while, then they'll start getting discouraged, and then ultimately just attribute it to external factors that are preventing them from losing weight, instead of kind of looking at what they've done and looking at ways to get better. So ways to kind of overcome learned helplessness, I would say, is once again surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded and have similar goals. At the clinic, something that we have been doing pretty well when we were able to meet in person was, for example, the 30 Days to a Healthier You workshop aimed to kind of pair patients together and form support groups so that they could check in on each other and learn from each other. And I think that's another really important thing to keep doing, even though we have this barrier of social distancing, because we all know that we are social creatures and that we like to surround ourselves with people because we can often get our energy from them. And so once again, we want to surround ourselves with that positive energy, people who are encouraging us to pursue our goals and try new things, so that even if we do have bouts of failure, that we're motivated to get back up and try again.
So that's important, actually. I think, thank you for bringing that up, Soya, because right now I gained 2 pounds, 174 pounds this week, but I'm enjoying the challenge. I was out there playing tennis at 5:15 this morning again. We're going to do some forks over knives, some healthy cooking. We had some really good healthy food this week. My wife is cooking up a storm of healthy food. And it's not, and I'm feeling getting closer. Yes, my weakness is still nighttime eating, but I'm not, it's my own fault, but I'm also getting better and joy of the trying. So Elon Musk can blow up some rockets. I can use my counselors on Star Trek to get me healthier, surround myself with more positive energy. And I'm not down because I didn't lose weight this week. I'm just moving forwards. And thank you for bringing that up. I think you said so well. It's
Thank you.
about the journey. It's about the trying. It's
Yeah.
not so much about always getting there, right? It's I'm
Yeah.
going to get there. I fit into my tuxedo. I'll see what I can fit into next week.
And I think it's really important as well. If we aren't succeeding, a lot of the times we will look at our failures and kind of be embarrassed by them and push them away. But I think it's really important to kind of look at why aren't we doing something well, and how can we improve. And I think it takes a lot of courage to address that step and evaluate your life and see, like, why isn't it working? Like, what part went wrong? Was it me? Was it something that I had or didn't have? But I think once we kind of progress towards that step, overall, like, combating challenges and building resilience becomes a lot easier.
And it's nobody's fault but my own. It's not my next door neighbors. It's not COVID-19. It's giving me the opportunity to work on this. So I'm going to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the pandemic, we've had a lot more time, or at least most of us have a lot more time to self-reflect. And of course, definitely with isolation, we have seen a lot of effects. A lot more people feeling anxious, maybe not as happy as they were. There's loneliness. And I think another thing to consider is how we need to really be evaluating our coping mechanisms and how we're addressing issues like anxiety, depression, etc. And I think one of the most common uses or coping strategies that is used to manage things like depression or anxiety is alcohol. And as we've seen, alcohol already is not great for COVID-19. It actually suppresses parts of the immune system and makes us more susceptible. And as well, we know for a fact that excessive alcohol consumption is known to increase incident atrial fibrillation. But this was a great study that Dr. Kearney mentioned before, looking at alcohol abstinence in drinkers and the effects on atrial fibrillation. And so this was kind of looking at secondary prevention of atrial fibrillation through abstinence of alcohol. And what this study actually found was that abstinence from alcohol did reduce the amount of arrhythmias that were occurring in regular drinkers. So it's definitely important to consider what we're surrounding ourselves with, and would definitely caution against alcohol consumption, especially if you have an existing heart condition or are trying to become more healthy.
And that's a randomized controlled trial, so it's high-quality research.
Yes,
It's not next door neighbor telling you something. It's not something I read off the internet. This is actually grade 1 evidence. So this clearly shows if you have intermittent atrial fibrillation, you can get rid of 1/3 of your episodes of atrial fibrillation by aiming to drink no alcohol. And these were people who were heavy drinkers. They went to, they didn't totally stop. They tried to, but they reduced their amount of atrial fibrillation by 1/3. And so this is actually important information. How many calories in a glass of alcohol again, somebody?
For a glass of wine, it can be, I think, maybe over 200 calories for a limited amount of ounces. It depends, but definitely a lot of excess calories. And as well, things like beer can significantly spike your triglycerides, which are not a good thing.
Yeah, so it can be between 100 to 200 calories for every serving of alcohol, and liquid calories don't fill you up. I'm not saying you shouldn't drink, but I'm saying is that alcohol consumption is not a health food. It puts you to sleep, but then wakes you up, so it's not good for sleeping disorders or people who can't sleep. It's not a great. It doesn't help you with anxiety. It certainly causes bleeding problems. It certainly causes certain cancers, and it certainly causes more atrial fibrillation, or people are prone to this. So at one time we thought alcohol was good for you. It's not. It's not a health food. And and I think, as Rachel pointed out last week, and people who drink too much, they don't think they drink too much. And so if someone around you is worried about your drinking, chances are you drink too much, and think about it. And for me, is that I want to weigh less and exercise more. So alcohol, I certainly did have a drink or two when my daughter's graduation, but I'm not much of a drinker, and I want to. I'm a nighttime eater, so so I have to keep my calories down, and that's one way not to. Thank you. Anxiety. Who's talking about anxiety?
Okay, we could just jump right in here. So in terms of the second part of this, we wanted to look at was specifically anxiety, because that's another thing that can be a limiting factor for us when we talk about resilience. I think a lot of the times we spend internalizing things that happen to us, and that time that we spend can generate a significant amount of fear, and that fear can then snowball and kind of prevent us from taking risks and trying new things. So in moderation, go back. Like it said on the slide, so in moderation, anxiety can help us in some ways. It is a normal part of our thought process and emotions, and sometimes it can give us a kind of reality check to get a grip on situations, but in other times it can be really limiting and sometimes debilitating for people, because it becomes kind of something that takes over their whole life. Okay, so when we look at how anxiety is perceived so how it works in our body, so the initial stressor will be kind of the perceived threat. In some cases, it'll just be a stressful situation that has just occurred, damaging news that we've received, anything that is kind of leaning towards potentially a negative emotion. And then our body will kind of interpret the stress, and then we'll get 3 different outcomes here. We'll have the rush of adrenaline, which is produced in our adrenal glands, in our kidneys, and this will lead to an increased heart rate. Our pupils will dilate, and we'll get a higher rate of blood flow. We also have stress triggered by cortisol, and then that long-term effects can cause damage to the immune system if repeatedly occurring. And then we'll also have the effect on our nervous system. And this is kind of where the fight or flight instinct will take place. And we will either choose to kind of move away from the situation or attack it head on. Okay, so there are a couple of thinking traps. So Emily actually took a resilience course from the University of Pennsylvania. If you want to talk a little bit more about thinking traps.
Yeah, of course. So this course was really interesting. It was offered, as was mentioned, by the University of Pennsylvania. And what they did was they kind of talked about a couple of main thinking traps. And thinking traps are defined as overly rigid patterns in thinking that can negatively affect well-being. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a quotation by James Clear, and he says that the first mistake is never the one that ruins you. It's the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. The problem is not slipping up. The problem is thinking that if you cannot do something perfectly, then you shouldn't do it at all. So basically what this quotation is saying is that it's okay to make mistakes, but giving up, that's something that we want to avoid. So as long as you're trying and as long as you're continuously fighting for the goal that you want to achieve, that's the most important part. Next slide. Yeah, so this is a little activity that I think would be kind of interesting for all of us to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present all of you with a couple of types of thinking traps, and I want you to ask yourself, which of these traps do I specifically fall into? And there are two kind of case studies or examples that we'll look at. The first is Shannon. So Shannon, she's been getting into many conflicts with her colleagues, and that's negatively affecting her job performance. And Aaron is a first-year university student. He's struggling with time management, and his first semester grades are also lower than expected. So keeping those two case scenarios in mind, let's progress into thinking about the examples of thinking traps. And I'll be covering 5 common thinking traps. The first is mind reading. Mind reading is essentially assuming that you know what another person is thinking, or assuming that another person knows what you're thinking. The second thinking trap is called the me trap, believing that you are the sole cause of every setback, that every single problem in your life is because of your fault. And then the third thinking trap is kind of the opposite of the me trap, but it's called the them trap. So that's believing that only external factors are the sole cause of every setback. And usually when you encounter a setback, the reasons why you encountered that negative situation will be due to a combination of both internal and external factors. So it won't be all because of yourself or all because of external factors. And then the fourth common thinking trap is catastrophizing. This is spending critical energy ruminating. And by rumination, we mean overthinking and going through repeated cycles of the same negative thoughts. So those are unproductive negative thoughts. And finally, helplessness. This is believing that you have no control over negative events in your life. So the first example, or the first type of thinking trap, is called mind reading. And the thinking trap here is Shannon's situation. So after she fights with a coworker, she says, my coworker, he thinks he's better than me, that he shouldn't have to do this type of work. And the result is that Shannon feels frustrated. She says, I was so frustrated. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't talk to him. I had to get out of there and walk away, just totally disconnect. So we can see that the result of mind reading can be this desire to disconnect and disengage from people. And that can be potentially dangerous and negative, because when we disconnect from people, we disconnect from our support systems. That puts us in situations of vulnerability where we may not be able to be as resilient as we would like to be, because support groups, as we mentioned previously in this presentation, are really important to building and improving resiliency. Next slide. Yep, so this is the me thinking trap, and this is Aaron's situation. He says, I'm just not cut out for this place. I'm not smart enough to be here, and everyone else is so much more accomplished than I am. And the result, Aaron says, I stopped going to dinner with friends. I stopped going out with them on the weekends, and I just spent a lot of time in my room alone. So we see that Aaron, he believes that his poor grades are all because of his intrinsic or inherent qualities, that he's just not cut out for this place, that everyone is miles ahead and he'll never be able to catch up. And similarly to the mind reading thinking trap, this leads to feelings of disconnectedness and it leads to a loss of motivation. Next slide. This is the them thinking trap. So Shannon, she's expressing her opinion of her colleague and she says, this guy is over in his head. Effectively, he's unqualified for this job. And with a colleague like him, no wonder I'm so upset. And the result of this thinking or this mindset is I was so pissed off, my heart was pounding, I stormed down the hall. This is very common when we try to attribute the causes of our negative circumstances to other people, solely external factors. We tend to become angry. We blame other people, and that anger prevents us from actually taking any purposeful action to addressing the problem. Now, the fourth thinking trap, catastrophizing. Aaron says, with grades like these, I'm not even going to be able to apply to the program I want. And if I can't do that, I'm not going to have the skills I need to get a job that I want. And I'm going to be stuck doing something I don't even want to do for my entire life. The result? Aaron says, man, I was anxious and I even think I started to get headaches. I tried to do some econ reading, economics reading, but I couldn't focus. It was such a bad day. So catastrophizing involves a thinking process where you go from one thought, you realize, okay, maybe my grades aren't where I want them to be, to a completely drastic other thought. In this case, Aaron says, I'm going to be stuck doing something that I don't want to be doing for my entire life. So this process leads to a very negative mental pattern where you essentially start to create these huge problems from really small things that are actually within your control. And the result of this thinking trap is anxiety, and it also prevents purposeful action from taking place. And finally, helplessness. So with this thinking trap, we're going to go back to the example of Shannon, and she describes her coworker by saying, the two of us, we're like oil and water. People don't change. We're stuck. I am who I am. He is who he is. That's it. And the result? Shannon says, I found myself totally drained. I just gave up. I threw in the towel on this project. So we can see that she feels helpless. She feels like the situation is just completely beyond saving, that it's completely not within her control, and she can't do anything to positively change the situation. And that leads to feelings of being drained, a lack of energy, and a loss in motivation. So just as a kind of discussion point, you can ask this question to yourself, share your thoughts with us in the chat, but which thinking traps apply to you? And I'll continue to talk and discuss the next slides, but feel free to, if there's something that pops up, a thought that pops up later on in your mind that you want to contribute or share, then feel free to just put it into the chat. And now we'll be talking a little bit about staying positive, and I believe Aditi will be discussing this.
Very well said, Emily. I think we can all see some of the things that we can get ourselves into trouble with. I thank you for putting those thoughts there.
Yeah, no problem. It was very interesting because when I was reading over it, I realized that I do some of those things, like mind reading, for example, just kind of thinking that oh, if I'm thinking these thoughts, then other people must know what I'm thinking. But understanding that that is not a good thing, and understanding that it's important to actually communicate with people and express what I'm thinking, that's important. So realizing the problem and problem identification is the first step in building and improving resiliency.
Yeah, sometimes I think the problem's always me, and it's not always me. It's I can change myself to some degree, but you have to surround yourself with other people. And one is being more positive. How do we become more positive?
So with respect to positive thinking, if you're able to frame a situation from a positive perspective, so trying to look on the bright side, practicing things like positive self-talk, so giving yourself credit for the little things that you do rather than focusing on all of the things you couldn't do, it helps you build stronger relationships. It leads to greater resilience because ultimately if you're able to put a positive spin on a day and take something positive away from it, you're more likely to adapt to the situation and recover from whatever is bringing you down than you are if you were to just focus on the negatives. And it does lead to better physical and mental health in general. When you feel more positive, you feel like you can approach more situations, but it also gives you motivation to be like physically active and to kind of move on with your day and accomplish all of the goals you've set out for yourself. And then there's less physiological effects of anxiety and anger. So, a common thing to recognize is that when you're struggling with a lot of emotions, it can have an impact on your body itself. So, you can start to feel all of these different thoughts and emotions physically as well. So, recognizing your thoughts and emotions, making sure that you take a more positive approach towards how you're going to move on from that, and recognizing that you can take something positive out of an experience can help you like reduce those effects on your body, and that overall leads to a greater chance of resilience when you're facing a particular outcome or situation. So positive aspects of the lockdown. I think like with the lockdown, especially when you talk about connection, having a community supporting you in moving forward from something, it's a little bit hard in the context of the lockdown because not everyone wants to be connecting through like social media or connecting over the phone all the time. Sometimes you crave that physical interaction, which is definitely hard to have in such a situation. So taking the time to get to know yourself better, learning how to improve your communication. So, how can you stay connected with people? And valuing what you already have, as well as enjoying some like at home activities.
Okay, and just some general tips when it comes to dealing with anxiety, or even just when you're at home. Of course, remaining calm, keeping good habits. We talked about this in a previous webinar as well, so I would recommend you check those out on YouTube. We go a little more into how habits affect our decision making and goals and how we achieve them eventually, as well as social connection and how that really influences if we're able to achieve our goals in the end. And of course, keeping a routine, that's a part of building good, strong, healthy habits. And so something that's interesting, and it sort of seems counterintuitive, but it's a way to deal with our anxiety. It's called worry time. And so the first step to establishing worry time is by reflecting on when you usually worry. When are you usually anxious? Is it at night? Is that what prevents you from sleeping, or is it in the morning when you get up, or is it all throughout the day? Whatever it is, you want to try to limit that time as much as possible by picking a specific period of maybe 15 to 30 minutes during the day. So it would be best sort of in the middle of the day or in the morning time, because if it's before bed, of course, those thoughts are going to keep you up. And the point of this worry time is so that you're only taking that moment to write down all your thoughts, all your worries. And after that, after you release it all during that period, you're going to try your best to postpone any more thoughts or worries, anxieties that come to your head. And instead, prompt yourself to focus on whatever you're doing in the present. And finally, once you're able to do that and prompt yourself not to worry, you're going to use your worry time to think about solutions. What can you actually do that will help you get over that anxiety, whether it's changing the way you think or the way you behave? And so worry time is actually a cognitive behavioral therapy technique that therapists use and has been shown to be effective. So it does sound counterintuitive to actually make time to worry, but the goal here is that we're able to control the amount of time by eventually limiting it and putting it to better use, such as time for reflection.
Yep, so now we'll be talking a little bit about strategies. And as you all probably know who Anne Frank is, she was forced into hiding in the Nazi-occupied Netherlands, and then she was later sent to a concentration camp known as Auschwitz. And despite living through the Holocaust, she writes, "I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains." And her words demonstrate immense optimism. She chooses to focus on what she does have rather than on what she has already lost. And next slide. So optimism is defined as the belief in a positive future, that although the present may be filled with lots of challenges, the future holds the promise of joy. And optimism is critical in resilience. Some researchers call it the engine of resilience. There are also both mental and physical benefits of optimism. So optimists, they often experience greater social support because their positive attitudes lead to stronger friendships and stronger support systems. They also report increased relationship satisfaction, greater quality of life, and they're less likely to experience symptoms of depression. And physical benefits include a more robust immune response, which is critical during the current pandemic. Having strong and efficient bodily defenses will help you fight off disease. And optimists are also less likely to have coronary heart disease, and we'll discuss the evidence supporting this statement on the next slide. They're also less likely to be rehospitalized, and they're more likely to live longer. So these benefits are pretty incredible. But what does the research say about optimism? And I'll be talking about two studies, the first of which is called The Benefits of Self-Compassion and Optimism Exercises for Individuals Vulnerable to Depression. And this study had a total of 188 participants, and it was a randomized controlled trial, which is considered grade 1 evidence. It's very high quality data. And the study divided its participants into two groups. Group 1 completed 2 online exercises that aimed to improve self-compassion and optimism, and Group 2 was a control group. So this group didn't do either of those exercises. And the study found that the two interventions, self-compassion and optimism, led to significant increases in happiness that were observed after 6 months. And these interventions also led to major decreases in depression. And during the pandemic, where people experience higher levels of depression, anxiety, as was previously noted in the graph that we showed, optimism can help combat these negative mental patterns. And then another study, this is a systematic review and meta-analysis. So it's not primary research, it's secondary research, but it investigated the relationship between optimism, cardiovascular disease, and mortality. And since this was a systematic review, the researchers conducted a database search for relevant studies, and they found 15 studies, a total of 15 studies, comprising about 230,000 participants. And they found that optimism was correlated with a decreased risk of cardiovascular disease events. And optimism was also significantly associated with a lower risk for all-cause mortality. So this study demonstrates that there is an association between optimism and better heart health, but it's important to remember that correlation is not the same thing as causation. We can't say for sure if optimism causes less cardiovascular disease events, but we do know that the two are associated in some way, whether that be through a third variable that still needs to be identified, for example. Next slide. So clearly, optimism has some major benefits, but how can we become more optimistic? And what sets optimists and pessimists apart? There are 3 main differences between positive thinkers and negative thinkers: cognitive differences, behavioral differences, and finally, emotional differences. And I'll be touching upon each of these. So first, cognitive differences. Optimists are actually very skilled at identifying problems, which is helpful because being aware of the problem helps people take steps to change their situation. And optimists also see trials as challenges rather than as threats. So, for example, let's say that an optimist were to receive a negative health diagnosis. They would say something along the lines of, "This is going to be challenging, this is going to be hard, but I have the skills and the abilities to cope with this situation." And finally, optimists are able to identify what they can control, and they're more likely to accept aspects of the situation that are beyond their control. And behavioral differences demonstrate that optimists are approach oriented. They develop strategies to change the situation rather than procrastinating or avoiding the situation altogether. So, if we use the same example of optimists receiving a negative health diagnosis, optimists they would take the initiative to seek out information, asking, "Well, what is this diagnosis, and who are the doctors that can help me?" Because optimists are more likely to seek out information and ask for help, they're also more likely to receive support. And because optimists engage in proactive behaviors, they often have consistent exercise routines, and that translates to better health, both physical and mental health. And finally, emotional differences, those are also significant. Optimists experience more positive emotion overall, and they use humor as a coping mechanism, which diffuses stress, and that improves their emotional health. Next slide. So this is kind of fun. Let's now consider a case study. Imagine that you're a patient and your doctor has just explained to you that you experienced a major heart attack. And let's consider a pessimist's reaction and an optimist's reaction. A pessimist would say something like, "My dad died of a heart attack. This is all genetic anyway, and there's nothing I can do." That leads to withdrawal, and that prevents any purposeful action from taking place. And because of that, the pessimist is more likely to re experience a subsequent heart attack. Whereas the optimist would say something like, "My dad died of a heart attack too. And this is a wake up call. My future is bright because I'm capable of changing my behavior." And so the optimist identifies areas of improvement. Maybe they change to a plant based whole foods diet and incorporate aerobic and non aerobic exercise into their routine. And by taking purposeful action, the optimist is actually less likely to experience a subsequent heart attack. So we can see from this scenario that pessimists and optimists can find themselves in the exact same situation, but it's their reactions towards their situation that's what sets them apart. So you do have the power to lead a healthier, happier life. That is within your control. But lifestyle changes always start with your attitude and your inwards beliefs. Next slide. So now we're going to transition into talking about gratitude. And this is a quotation from Melody Beattie. She's a self help author and she's survived tons of challenges throughout her life, one of which just includes surviving the death of her own child. But she uses her story to help others overcome grief and pain. And to her, gratitude makes sense of her past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. Next slide. So, what exactly is gratitude? Well, gratitude is a cognitive frame that involves two things: focusing on what you're receiving and thinking about the goodness that surrounds you. And gratitude is a critical part of well being. And another important thing, there is a difference between pangs of gratitude and a sustained practice of gratitude. And I'll be talking about specific strategies that you can implement into your life to make gratitude a sustained practice. So, why is gratitude important? Well, the research shows us that gratitude, like optimism, leads to increases in happiness and decreases in depression. And a study at the University of Pennsylvania divided participants into two groups: a gratitude intervention group and a placebo group. And the gratitude intervention group was instructed to list three positive things with explanations for why they think those positive things happened at the end of each day. But the placebo group was just instructed to journal about early memories. And the researchers found that the participants in the gratitude intervention, they experienced increases in happiness and decreases in depression compared to the people in the placebo group. And then the next study that we looked at shows how gratitude actually increases helping behaviors. And this study was conducted by Dr. Adam Grant. He's a psychologist and a professor at the Wharton School of Pennsylvania, and he conducted a study using college students as participants. And the college students were fundraising. They were asking for donations over the phone. And half of these students were sincerely thanked by their supervisor, but the other half was not acknowledged by their supervisor at all. And students who received a sincere expression of gratitude, they made 50% more calls than those who were not thanked. So this demonstrates that expressions of gratitude can actually help others lead positive lives. Next slide. And these are some more benefits of gratitude. And I'm sure that there are even more benefits beyond what I've listed here on the slide, but the first of which includes better quality sleep. Anxiety and overthinking, that will engage your body's fight or flight response, and that prevents people from falling asleep easily. But gratitude will facilitate better sleeping and higher quality sleep, because when you think about good things, that engages the body's rest and digest response, which helps you feel calm. Gratitude also leads to stronger relationships. It's correlated with stronger faith. It leads to less materialism and also encourages greater degrees of humility as well. Next slide. So now we get to the practical part of this presentation. How do we incorporate strategies into our lives? And I'll be answering that question with these 5 gratitude strategies. The first is visual cues. Second, family blessings. Third, talking to loved ones. Fourth, immersing ourselves in nature. And fifth, gratitude post-its. So what I encourage you to do is pick one specific strategy, just one that resonates the most with you, and stick to it for the next week, and then share your experiences with us next Friday in the group chat. Next slide. So first I'll be talking a little bit about visual cues, and this is a quotation from someone who has used this method, and he says, "You can see my accept the good poster. When I'm really wallowing and I'm going downwards, I'll come and stand in front of it and think, accept the good. Really listen and think about the good things or the things that are good in your life. And I have got lots of good." So he uses a poster as a visual cue to think positive, grateful thoughts. And if you don't have a poster, that's completely fine as well. You could use other visual cues like notes pinned to a bulletin board, as you see in the first picture. Or what you could do is write your favorite positive quotations on a bunch of cue cards and then string those cue cards together and carry those cue cards with you wherever you go. And if you notice a negative thought arising, take out the cue cards and flip through them, because sometimes we just need a little reminder of positivity, and visual cues provide us just with that. And secondly, the next slide we'll be talking about family blessings. And that's the slide. So one family says, "It's been about 5 years since we started family blessings, 3 blessings every night. We call it the 3 blessings, and it's a special time where we all gather together in my son's room. We cuddle up and we share the special events of each day, and we do 3 each." So this activity is really interesting because it combines not only a habit of gratitude, but also family time as well. So the more you practice gratitude, the deeper and more meaningful your gratitude will become. So for example, if you do try out the family blessings, you may start off being thankful for things like good weather or a good meal, but then that can slowly transition into becoming gratitude for relationships in your life, like important family, important friends, or even encouraging words that you received from a coworker maybe. And it's really fascinating to see how you and your family can grow in the depth of your gratitude. And next, we'll be talking about talking to loved ones. So even if you're not physically present with your family members due to the pandemic, we can still try to use technology to bridge those gaps, kind of like what we're doing right now. And one lady describes, The way that I practice gratitude is texting my mom every morning. She lives across the country from me, so it's very important for me that I keep in touch. And I usually either say I love you or I send her a picture of something that I took during the day. And even though she's just 2 hours behind and it's like 4 in the morning for her, she always texts me back. So that's just a great way for me to start my day. And talking to loved ones, that reminds us of the important relationships that we have in our lives. And that, by extension, helps us to remain grateful for the people in our lives. And keeping in touch with your loved ones also builds a support network that can help you stay resilient. And second to last, we'll be talking about immersing yourself in nature. And this is a very beautiful way to incorporate gratitude into your life. This quotation says, "One of my favorite things to do is take walks in my neighborhood. And one of the ways that I practice gratitude is by taking pictures while I'm on my walks. When I'm not outside, I can look back and just experience the emotion that I was experiencing when I was taking those walks." So, for many, nature provides us with an escape and also with an opportunity for solitude and peace. And when we think negative thoughts, it can become really easy to become trapped in this cycle of rumination. But when you get outside, when you breathe in the fresh air and you observe the world around you, that puts your problems into perspective. And finally, gratitude post-its is the last strategy. And all you need for this activity is a post-it and a pen. And as one lady describes, I write different ways in which I'm grateful for my husband on post-it notes. I put those notes in a suitcase so that while he's away, he's reminded of the ways I'm grateful for him. So gratitude is not only noting or taking note of the goodness that surrounds you, but it's also expressing this thankfulness to the people around you. And when you write these little notes, that not only helps you feel happier, but it also reminds your loved ones that they're incredibly appreciated. And you could even write these gratitude post-its and stick them on your bathroom mirror, because that way one of the first things you see when you wake up is a little burst of positivity. I hope you're not too tired of hearing my voice, but this is the last strategy that we'll be talking about, which is mindful breathing. And this is separate from the gratitude strategies. And mindful breathing is really just that, it's breathing, but with a conscious awareness of your breath and the way that the air is flowing throughout your body. And I know what you're thinking, can breathing actually have an effect on my mood? And the research actually says yes. A study published in Nature, which is a very reputable scientific journal, found that mindful breathing increases efficiency in brain networks. So, in the study, there were two groups. The first group was taught mindful breath meditation, and they were instructed to practice it consistently. And the second group didn't do any mindful breathing. After 8 weeks, after 2 months, both groups completed two tasks, which measured visual attention, working memory, and attentional engagement. And the mindful breathing group, they outperformed the control group in both tests. So the study concludes that mindful breathing can refine attention networks, making the brain more efficient. And so even though it sounds crazy that something as simple as mindful breathing or breathing can have lasting impacts on your health, it's true. So let's try it on the next slide. So what I'll do is, this might be a strange experience for some of you, me talking about breathing and guiding you through how to breathe, which is a very natural process. But what I'll basically do is explain a little bit the overall concept of how we're going to do this, and then we'll actually practice it. So the main important thing to note is when you breathe in and inhale, you want to feel your belly or your stomach expand, but when you exhale, you want your belly to contract. So that's the main point. So first, I'm going to do this with you so it's not strange, but take one hand and feel free to put it on your heart, and then take the other and put it on your belly. I know you can't see my belly, but my hand's on my belly. And take a couple of normal breaths, just noticing how you're breathing. And I'll count for 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you're like most of us, you'll probably have noticed that when you're breathing, you're noticing that the hand on your chest is actually the one that's rising and falling. So you're breathing through your chest, but we want to kind of reverse that, and you want your belly to be the thing that's expanding, contracting when you're breathing. So now feel free to get into a comfortable position. If you're sitting on a chair, you can plant your feet on the ground and really feel the contact between your shoes or the soles of your feet and the ground. And continue to have one hand on your chest and the other hand on your belly. And inhale deeply for 5 seconds. I'll count you in. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you would continue to do this for 2 minutes, but for the sake of time, we'll stop here. But I know that that may have been an unusual experience for some of you, but once you're done mindfully breathing, take a couple of moments to observe and ask yourself, are you feeling calmer? And do you notice that maybe you're thinking clearer? I know that this whole mindful breathing thing may seem unusual, but the more you practice it, the more natural it'll feel. And personally, if I'm feeling anxious or overwhelmed, maybe I have a lot of schoolwork to do, I notice that my heart rate increases and my breathing becomes a lot more shallower. So I start breathing really quickly. And those are cues for me to start mindfully breathing. And I can guarantee you every single time I'm done with my 2 minutes of mindful breathing, I feel a lot calmer and a lot more resilient. I'm ready to take on whatever challenge comes my way. So that's all I have to say about mindful breathing. And now we will talk about protective factors.
So when you talk about protective factors, they're basically factors that are supposed to reduce the impact of adversity and increase resilience. So a lot of research about these different types of factors is actually focused on child psychology and looking at the environment a child grows up in and how that impacts their ability to be vulnerable and resilient. So it usually focuses on things like parental resilience, social connections, concrete support in times of need, knowledge of parenting and child development, social and emotional competence of children. But in the context of resilience, it actually has a lot of impact on your life after childhood. There are a lot of experiences early on that shape your ability to be resilient. However, you don't necessarily have control over that. So, what's important to understand is how different protective factors play into your life and what are the aspects that you can control to ensure that you're giving yourself the best chance at being resilient. So, these are I'm going to start discussing different classes of protective factors. So the first one is biology. So that focuses on your physical and mental health and ability. So with biology, there are certain factors that you can't control. For example, they theorize that you have some sort of inherent resilience that comes as a result of genetics or the product of the way you grew up, and you don't always have control over that. But there are different biological factors that you can control. So our bodies respond to stress in certain ways, and that can sometimes make us more resilient or less resilient depending on our stress response. So recognizing those responses and being able to work with them is part of having biological protective factors. The other would be just being in better physical and mental health. So for example, if you get an injury, but prior to having the injury, you were very physically active, you were strong, and then you had a generally positive mindset, you're more likely to bounce back from the injury a lot quicker and a lot better than you would if you didn't have those factors working in your favor beforehand. Another class is self-awareness. So that's understanding your mental and physical needs and being aware of your body and how it is responding. So when we think about self-awareness, there's the mental aspect to it. So That means, pressing pause once in a while, thinking about your thoughts and emotions and the roles they play in a situation. Are they helping you? Are they hindering you? What is it that you're feeling, and what is the feeling associated with? So that's the mental aspect. There's also a physical aspect. So like I mentioned while talking about biology, our bodies have different stress responses and different people respond in different ways. So sometimes you can have physical indications of what your body needs, and being able to recognize what it needs and do what works in your favor can help you adapt to a situation a lot better and recover from it as well. Then there's mental agility, which is the ability to look at things from different perspectives. So, being able to look at a situation from different perspectives or different vantage points can increase resilience. Mental agility is also about problem solving. So, not only do you need to be able to look at a situation from different perspectives, but you need to be able to understand what these perspectives are telling you and how you can create a solution that's going to work in your favor. So, having good mental agility, so being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes or view a situation from a different standpoint, and then being able to problem solve, saying that, okay, if I'm going to look at the situation this way, this is what the root of the problem really is, and really addressing that root of the problem can increase your resilience and make it more likely for you to adapt to a situation. And then there's optimism, which was mentioned earlier, but it basically means believing in a positive future. Optimism is especially critical to resilience because resilience is, a journey that can vary in times. Sometimes it can be a rather long journey with a lot of like obstacles along the way, and optimism is really key to keeping you on that path. For example, if you're recovering from an injury, it's often not a quick process. It takes a really long time, and it takes, understanding your body and that it needs time to heal. Being optimistic throughout that journey ensures that you don't feel the pain of all of those setbacks, but rather you're able to keep moving forward towards your end goal. So there's also self-regulation. So self-regulation is the ability to change your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So I mentioned self-awareness earlier, which was recognizing your physical and mental needs. Self-regulation is being able to recognize this and then change it to adapt to the situation. For example, if you're very anxious about your situation, your body can respond with fight or flight sensations where you feel really primed to react and you feel really hyper. And there's no particular reason behind that. It's just that you're anxious. Self regulation comes into play when you're able to recognize that, and not just recognize that, but also employ strategies to calm down. So, for example, if you're really anxious, you feel really primed to react to a situation, there's no particular trigger. Understanding that this means that you're really stressed and engaging in different activities that help calm you down. For example, focusing on a hobby or talking to someone else. Those are aspects of self regulation that help you modify and maintain your emotions so that you're able to better adapt to and understand what it is that you're going through. So, improving self regulation involves a lot of goal setting, which can provide a sense of purpose and drive progress. And it also helps you understand that there are certain things that you can control. And by changing the way you're feeling in a particular situation, you can be a little more resilient about it. Another factor is self efficacy, which involves having an I can do sort of attitude and recognizing your talents and strengths. So it's basically how well you can execute a course of action required to deal with a situation. So I've mentioned goal setting and problem solving in relation to the different challenges or obstacles you might be facing. Self-efficacy is really about recognizing what you're good at, what are your talents, what are your strengths, and using that in creating a plan of action that's going to work out best for you. For example, if you're in a situation where you're incredibly stressed, but you know that one of your skills is being able to kind of plan time and make schedules. Maybe how you deal with that stressful situation is say, okay, anytime I feel like I'm getting really agitated about deadlines and what I have to do, I'm going to take the time to make a schedule to block out specific times in my day and go about it that way. That's utilizing something that you're used to doing, something that you're good at doing in order to address a particular situation and create a plan of action that's going to work for you. There's also connections, which focus on building relationships and having attachments to others. So having a support system and being connected can increase resilience. So you, in general, have more people to talk to, more people to rely on, people who are not only there for you on your journey, but can be invested in your journey as well. So a lot of this evidence comes from research with children. So children who have a stronger connection or attachment to their parents, guardians, siblings, caregivers are more likely to be resilient later on in life. And the similar application applies to people in general life. Having a good support system around you can help you recover from a situation, can help you adapt to a situation, and can help you build like a positive sense of community. And lastly, there's positive institutions, which play a supportive role. So it's basically resources and safety provided by institutions. And institutions can be your family, it can be the community, it can be the workplace, it can be where you go to school. So feeling safe at home or feeling safe in school or having services and connections that work for you can help increase resilience. It basically reduces the impact of adversity on your life. And by having that kind of support that you can reach out to in times of need, you're going to know that, okay, the school is a safe place for me, or home is a safe place for me. If I'm having a rough day, if I need to be able to deal with a situation that's coming up, I can go to these places, discuss with people there. I'm able to build positive connections, and that's going to help me formulate a plan of action and move on from the situation. So now that we've discussed some of the different protective factors, it's important to analyze different ways you can implement these protective factors. So these are factors that reduce the impact of adversity and increase resilience, but there are little things that you can do that tie into these factors that are going to give you a better chance at coming back from different situations and obstacles you might face. So the first one is goal setting. So what's important with this is setting realistic goals to provide a sense of purpose, and also address your concerns and help you look beyond the moment. So you can keep working towards something and keep dealing with an obstacle that comes up. So if you're setting a goal, for example, if I have an exam coming up and I know I need to review certain chapters, I say, okay, today I'm going to review 3 chapters, and that would be like a realistic goal. It provides you a sense of purpose. For example, if you're really stressed, you know you have this goal to get these 3 things done, and it's going to encourage you to persevere towards getting those 3 things done. Then there's looking on the bright side. So that really involves trying to find one positive thing every day. So taking a moment at whatever point during the day to reflect on all of the experiences that have happened. And rather than fixating on what's been negative, trying to think of one positive thing. This is especially important when you look at people who are recovering from a particular injury or particular illness, or someone who's trying to overcome a situation that's really messed up their life and really impacted their sense of like stability within their life. Trying to draw that one positive thing every day helps people formulate this habit of looking on the bright side. So another thing that ties into it is thinking about everything you're grateful for. So a technique that's practiced with a lot of people who face anxiety and depression is making these lists and analyzing all of the different things that they're grateful for to provide a sense of hope and a sense of optimism. And then the last one would be positive self-talk. So this involves giving yourself credit for all of the little things that happen. For example, if I've set the goal that I need to accomplish 3 things, and I'm not able to accomplish all 3 of those things, I can only accomplish 2 things. Rather than beating myself up for not being able to accomplish all 3 things, saying, you know, good on me for being able to do 2 things. I did those 2 things, I did them well, that's good enough for today. Then next one would be hobbies, which I realize I've misspelled on the slide, but picking hobbies that suit you, and it helps you find fun and creative ways to address what you need both mentally and physically, and it ties into a more fun aspect of goal setting. There's also support, so staying connected, reaching out for help and support if you need it, finding positive services and resources in the institutions around you, and being able to engage with those resources and services to ensure that you're taking care of yourself. And the last thing would be to learn from experience. So this really involves recognizing that you don't have control over a lot of different things, and not having control is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's okay to just go with the flow and recognize that there are certain things you can't control. So you're just going to go where life takes you at this particular moment. And also recognizing positive and negative experiences and building on them. So if you have a positive experience and there was a particular service that you connected with in order to give you that positive experience, knowing that when you have a rough day, you can turn back to that service to give you a positive experience. Or if you, conversely, if you had a negative experience, knowing that maybe that's not for you and you can try something new in the future.
Okay. And like Aditi said, we should learn how to go with the flow. And that involves understanding what we can control and what we can't control. And I just found this graphic, which I think is a good reminder that although we feel trapped at home or kind of stuck, there's a lot of things that we have control over in our personal lives. And I think this makes for a good screen background on your phone or something. If just something to look at and remind yourself, if there's one thing I can do, it's either eat well, sleep early, or even just treat my family and friends nicer. And so, of course, like we talked about, you should connect with other people. And we're glad that you chose to connect with us on a Friday night, whether it's on YouTube or through WebEx. We'd encourage you, if you haven't yet, to join our webinars with your audio and video so that you can ask us questions and actually discuss the information we're talking about. That way we can clarify information or give you, elaborate more on the information that you really want to know more about. And it might be tough if you're staying home alone, but of course you have us anytime. There's also the link at the beginning of the video where you can provide us with your information so that we can reach out to you personally. And just continue to have that positive attitude at home and take more time for yourself if you can. And remember that the only constant in life is change. And so when we talk about resilience, that's the exact idea, is being able to adapt to those changes that are happening in our life. And that will determine whether or not we come out stronger. And just going over the images we saw at the beginning, here we have a patient and some of his goals are to work with others, ride his bike half an hour a week, go to the supermarket and buy healthier foods, specifically avoiding potato chips and pie. And he has his goal weight there, and he wants to lose 5 pounds. And I like the last goal a lot. It's come watch the webinars weekly and read the book. And so if you don't know yet what a SMART goal is, we have it outlined here. So it's something that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And we have some examples there to illustrate how you can take a general goal and make it more specific and achievable. And so the question then for you as we end the webinar shortly is, what's on your checklist? What are you going to do next? Whether it's eating healthy, that's the general idea, and go deeper into that yourself of how exactly you're going to achieve that, whether it's through a specific diet, like a vegetarian diet, or if it's through just limiting your portion sizes. And that is about all we have. If you have anything to add, any questions, please feel free to chime in now.
Wow, fantastic! I've been to. Can you go back one more slide? Just go back to the this one more. I'm sorry, just the email address, please. I've been to many talks, to many sessions. This is really quite an accomplishment. I think I reminded me in 1 hour and 45 minutes. Got my PhD in psychology, insurance, sports medicine, how to better everything. how do we put this into practice? And I think you all did such a wonderful job.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's all I can say. And that Star Trek slide, you are counselors to me, all of you. You've made me better at what I do, and my job is to make you better at who you are and who you become, because you are all such fine people. And if we can all keep this optimism going, and if we can help, again, you have that email address, drkernew@232gmail.com. If you need some support, want some support, we'll give you that in any way we possibly can. I'm blessed with a lot of supports, and you've seen some of these top-notch people here deliver that to you. And with all this comes from the heart that you see from these people, and they've done a tremendous job. And thank you. I'm gonna give a little hand up for you. It was wonderful. Thank you. And is that any comments, Paul? What
Yeah.
away from this? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Any other comment?
Is there any way we can print off some of these slides?
We can
Sure.
have
You know what?
emailed.
Yeah, we can email you the slides, and also I can. You know what I'll do? I'll have these slides made into PDF, and if you hop onto YouTube, you just go to YouTube and type in Dr. Kernew. In the description and comments of this video, I'll have a PDF of these slides so that you can print them off there.
Thank
Does
you.
that work?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
And a lot of these slides will end up in our Google Books. We have about 10,000 pages to share with you. Remember Encyclopedia Britannica? This is Encyclopedia Health. This is another 25 years of work, and and some of this will be put in there. And yes, we'll share this. And please share this with everybody, because I'm going to go back and look at this and pause and rewind. That's great. Paul, any question? Any questions from anybody?
A lot of thank yous from YouTube. So many excellent strategies. Thank you for your positivity. So it does seem to have a great impact on others. I did want to throw in a quick comment as well. I do think that resilience and motivation is something that's very important. A lot of us, or the growth of this whole idea of mental health and building up your resilience and motivation is something that's relatively new. A lot of us might not have heard too much about it growing up, but that doesn't exempt you from the fact that you have to push yourself to be more resilient, push yourself to address the anxieties that you face. I can speak on, I really enjoyed the quick meditation session that Emily did, because I meditate about 30 minutes every morning, and it just helps me feel like I'm starting my day off fresh, just forget yesterday's worries and yesterday and start off today as a new day and enjoy the new day today. So, a lot of us are used to not doing many of these external practices, but when you really put some conscious effort into these external practices, whatever it is for you, whether it's meditating or it's doing some exercise or reading a book, whatever you do to help yourself become more motivated and resilient, you'll only see greater and greater and greater benefits than from your baseline as well. So I do highly encourage to try something new, try something out. Don't be afraid to fail, because even in the meditation course I'm doing right now, it's probably I'm on like 30 days in a row now, but I have been trying to meditate on and off for about 4 to 5 years. So it always goes, I'll be meditating for a little bit, and then I stop for some period of time, then pick back up and stop for some period of time. But now I'm really happy to say that I didn't give up on that, and I'm still giving it a try. So if you do have a goal, set yourself a goal, and don't be afraid to fail. But it's very important that you can pick back up where you left off.
Don't be afraid to work hard. Enjoy the journey. I forget how many hours do we have in a week again? A lot.
164, I believe, something along those lines.
But is that when someone says to you, I don't have the time, the answer is, I think, as Erica said, my priority is not what we're offering, and that's okay. My priority is to make you all healthy, and to make you better people. And it frustrates me when I don't see people working hard at that. I understand we can't always be optimistic. We all have our downside, but you know, it's a great journey, and we're gonna have our ups and downs in this. And you guys give me some techniques to work on. What's everybody else going to do differently? Zoya, what are you going to do differently this week?
I think when I talked about normalizing failure, I think it's really important as well just to try new things. And I'm really fortunate to have this time to reconnect with my family, and so I'm just going to continue building positive relationships, hopefully trying new things with my family, and helping them get better as well as helping myself.
Nice. Emily, what are you going to do differently this week?
I want to actually try the gratitude post-it strategy, just because I think that that's something that I try to do. Just if I come across like a really nice quote, I'll write it down and then like stick it on my laptop or something, but actually putting it maybe like in my bathroom mirror so that when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I just start my day off on a good mood. So I'm excited to do that.
Erica, what are you going to do differently?
Something that I've been trying to do more is writing. And as someone who can't sit still for too long, meditation's not my favorite. I prefer maybe stretching or even, something a little bit more active. But lately I found that just writing down my thoughts and sometimes even writing a story of some sort helps me sort of release those worries and anxieties. So journaling maybe every morning is one of my goals.
Nice. What about Aditi? What are you going to do differently this week?
I think I'm gonna try to do some more of like the positive self-talk. I might try the gratitude post-its too. I really like that idea. I think it would be nice to kind of start off every day on a nice note, and at the end of the day, be able to reflect on everything I did accomplish rather than focusing on what I couldn't do.
One of the things that I felt that many people in medicine are type A personalities. We live in our own silos. What over the last number of years, I realized that we're not really good silos. We're better if we work together in some way. So I'm going to keep working to reach out to everyone who make a difference, and just be more grateful, enjoy the moment. One of the things that I didn't always do in my life was enjoy the moment. So many things to do. Just do from one chapter to this chapter of your lives and not enjoy it. So what I'm going to try to do is just enjoy those moments. And when I go outside, I'm hearing the birds. When I ride my bike with the sunset or sunrise, I'm going to enjoy that a bit more and just be more appreciative and gratitude. I'm very grateful that I'm able to still hopefully contribute, make a difference, and learn, and allowing us to share this. These webinars are one example of what we're able to accomplish. That book that took so long to complete. Um, um, Procrastination is a good word in there, but because there's so many people, we have a really good book, and it's nice to see that book go to good use. So I'm until Labor Day, please, if you want, is buy a book and earn $60 for somebody else, and get yourself healthier along the way if that's something you want to do. But don't feel pushed in any way. I don't want people to feel that they obliged in any way. I just want people to enjoy the journey. And what a wonderful, wonderful evening. And thank you so much. Any other comments there from anyone?
So thank you for the valuable information and ideas, but mostly the motivation to keep trying to be healthy.
Great. Well, I always have to give Paul the last word for these webinars. Paul, what's your concluding remarks today?
I think like you mentioned as well, I think this was one of my favorite sessions that I've seen, just because psychology is not something I myself am very familiar with, but I think it's fascinating to see how our minds work. And once we understand how our minds work, we can use that to our advantage and really just start focusing on the good things in life, like our health, and looking for or being grateful for the small little things. And it's these small differences that are just going to overall improve our life. And so I am really looking forward to giving that a try.
Do any of our contributors and our mentors of the day and our guidance counselors have anything to add to this? Next time I watch Star Trek, I'm never going to think of it in the same way. I got to Star Trek much better than it was before. Thank you. Any other thoughts for anyone? Well, I just want to wish everyone a wonderful week, and I'm going to be more resilient than ever. I'm starting my morning tomorrow morning I'm sleeping in tomorrow morning. I'm only playing tennis at 6:30 in the morning. I have a few more phone calls to make tonight. Maybe I'll just make them tomorrow. We'll see. I'll catch up with everybody, and thank you all so much, and have a wonderful week. For those who are interested, we have some forks over knives tomorrow. We have other things as well, and I guess for those that are done for the night, have a great week. Become more resilient. Go out there and try something new. The rest of us are just going to stay on the line here